Welcome to the Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Steve Jobs, but made in China. Now, let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to the Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Black Gold Cooperative, turning oil into everything your heart desires at Black Gold Cooperative. Welcome everybody to the Pestle. I am Wes.
And I'm Todd.
And this is the movie podcast where we, as filmmakers, analyze and break apart films. And as filmmakers and writers, actors, etc., we watch a lot of stuff. And over the last year and some change, or not quite a year, it's been strange being stuck at home, no real movies coming out, and I've kind of run out of quality programming. And so I finally signed up for Apple TV just to kind of start rolling through, what they have going on. And it's okay. I mean, it's, much like any other show, with the exception that I don't know why Netflix is I don't want to say the only, but has figured out kind of the best version of an interface on how to interact with their and browse their content. Now I understand, and Apple TV Plus is just so brutal, but I think one of the reasons is they don't have much content, and so in order to kind of hide that, they just kind of make everything very hard to browse through and look through. So it feels like you have more to kind of sift through, instead of saying, "Hey, show me all your TV shows," or list your movies for me, or whatever. It's literally like, I don't know if you
just want to pick something so that you don't have to dig.
Yeah, or just let me see what the options are. Literally, if you are trying to browse through it, like on their website, you can't. They only show you one thing at a time, and it takes up the entire screen. It's like it would be like, hey, I want to watch a movie, and then someone flopped down remember those old massive movie posters that they used to have in Walmart? He was like, yeah, here you go. Here's 75 of them. And you have to flip through them one at a time. It's exactly like that. It's that experience, but on a laptop.
That sounds wonderful.
It's fantastic. And then they don't have their app on Android, and so I can't really install their app on. I have a Shield that runs all my stuff because I'm refusing to buy the little Apple TV box or whatever. I'm like, I don't need another box of I'm good.
Yeah, another thing to plug in. Yeah.
I'm so good. So, but it's, other than that, I mean, it's been nice. I got to watch some really well produced, if not incredible work. It's really good stuff. Morning Show.
Oh, good.
Finally watch that. It's nice to see Jennifer Aniston and Steve Carell kind of on screen. And a bunch of other stuff. Yeah. So I don't know if you've checked out Apple TV Plus. They're not a sponsor or anything. But
no.
If you feel the need for, something that is shot really well, they have some decent stuff. Defending Jacob is really good. Chris Evans. I like seeing Chris Evans in a non-Marvel role.
All right.
That is probably the best thing they have on there so far. And I have one other that I'm going to recommend. It's called Defending Jacob.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
No, I haven't checked it out.
That one's probably worth, do the free 7-day trial or something and watch and binge that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that would probably be worth it.
Yeah. Okay. Will do.
So are you a fan of musicals? Do you watch a lot of musicals? Maybe two separate questions.
No, that's a loaded question. If I ever heard one from you. I hate musicals. We both hate musicals. That's part of the reason why we're doing this.
But your wife
it's
likes musicals. Is that right? Would you say she does?
No, not really. Not really. I mean, she has seen more of them than me. She's not outgoing and where she'll go look for them, but she doesn't like them, but she likes a good story. If it makes her cry, she likes it. Pretty much everything makes her cry. So Yeah. I don't think that she particularly loves musicals, but she doesn't avoid them. Like, she doesn't. Yeah. Me, I personally can't stand them because most of the time, they just lead you down this like long rabbit hole that they could take 2 minutes to say, and instead they take 4 or 5, 5 at least, or 6 or whatever. So
And they dance while they say
musical,
it.
and they dance while they say it, which is fine, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what about you? What are your feelings on them?
Yeah, same. I grew up not watching a lot of musicals. The only one I really remember around the house was The Wizard of Oz, which my mom is a fanatic. And maybe that just turned me off point blank, because it was on all the time. I mean, I think as she got older, she was able to, as work got better, she was able to buy things that she wanted finally. The kids are out of the house, and now she's got her own business, and she started getting all these gifts and like buying weird stuff that is turned into like her home office is like this badly thrown up, vomited Wizard of Oz shrine. I mean, it's just everywhere. So I'm just trying to paint a picture. She was always that person, even before she had that stuff. And so we would watch Wizard of Oz all the time, and I hated it so much. Why is there so much singing? And I just don't care about any of this. And so I've never seen Grease. There's a lot of like staples, right? I've never seen The Sound of Music. I think I had to sit through West Side Story in high school, right, as a part of some Shakespeare course or something. Because right, it's kind of a retelling of Romeo and Juliet,
right,
quote unquote modernized, which I would raise a flag to.
Spoiler alert.
But so I hate it. Because I think you've said it before way better, and I'm going to like butcher you right now, where it's like it combines the worst of acting and the worst of music to tell a story. It really does.
Yeah. Did I say that? Wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah, no,
that's exactly
genius. It nails it.
Yeah. Like one of the biggest reasons why it not just like musicals in general, but just like music, especially music movies, is that usually they don't get a musician to play the instrument, or to be the lead role. Usually, we've talked about this ad nauseum when we did Once. So if you haven't seen that episode, you should go watch that for our full thoughts on musical movies. But when you don't get a real musician who knows how to even hold the damn instrument, much less play it, it's obvious painfully, and so you're completely taken out of it. And then on top of that, if they're not really singing, if they're ad-libbing and they're lip syncing, and it just it's so obvious, not even to just a musician, but to anyone really, like if you're. But I think that a lot of people who are not like very intuitive when it comes to movies and their experience in general, they might not even know what it means to be taken out of the film, right? They just kind of like feel a little off, right? I mean, 9 out of 10 people that I talk to can't even tell that their HD TV has that motion plus setting on it that drives me freaking insane, and it blows my mind. I'll look at a TV, I'm like, do you see this? Unless you're watching football or baseball or basketball or sports, it is the worst viewing experience you could have. And most people don't even see it. So that leads me to believe that a lot of times, if you're watching a musical film and you can, their voice is a little bit out of sync. I mean, just even slightly with the actual, recorded track, they might not really think, oh, I feel like I'm taken out of it because it's obvious that this person isn't singing. They might just think, they might not think anything. Who knows? But for me, holy cow! Like it is. I mean, that is, you're doing a musical, anything, that is priority one. The person doing the musical role needs to be able to play the piano, play the guitar, sing, whatever it is they're supposed to do. They have to be able to do it. I'm out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, usually it's surrounded by bad story. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, and I have a hard time, and as you're talking, I'm even trying to put a finger on why I dislike them so much. And I think one of the things, other than what you've already said, is I really like human connection, and dramas are my favorite genre. And I love music. I mean, I loved music more growing up than I did movies. I loved movies, but I just was obsessed with music. And with a musical, you don't have the same level of human connection because they're so busy performing, and they're trying to let the music speak to the emotion of the moment more than the performance and actual connection. And so I think that's one of the hardest parts for me to accept is I can't really, feel the performers in their role whenever I'm seeing musicians singing and dancing and performing for an audience. That for me, I think, is what makes it so strained and difficult to really sit still through a musical. Unless, I think for me, the exceptions are if I'm actually in the audience. That's a
great point.
Different experience entirely for me. Like I saw Les Mis a really long time. Actually, it was right after 9/11. I was in New York a few months after that, and we took a break from doing what we were doing and went and saw Les Mis, and it was absolutely amazing. I was enthralled the entire time. And yeah, so because I think then whenever the immediacy of it, right, I'm able to connect with the performers, even if they're not still doing what I, ideally want. The beauty of live performance is in the connection with the audience. And, that's a reciprocal thing. It's the performers connecting with them and feeding off the energy from the audience. I know I've done, stage performances before, and as a performer, that's everything. And you've done probably 1,000 live shows. If you haven't done 100,000, it's a completely different experience to be on stage than watching a live performance, pre-recorded and trying to connect with that.
Mm-hmm.
And, which I don't think really shifts even with the movie. Like, even if, we're obviously going to be talking about Hamilton, but even with musical movies, like I still feel that disruption whenever they slip out of the drama mode and go into musical mode. I'm like, there's this complete disconnection that I have to wait 30, 40, 90 seconds before I'm in the new flow, right? Wait for it. It takes forever.
That's a little foreshadowing. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But it does take forever for me to make that adjustment from, okay, we're singing now. Because it's just really, unless you build it like, the movie you were talking about a minute ago, unless you build it into the story, a musical cannot bridge that gap going from drama to music. It just can't happen.
Yeah, it's
difficult.
Or if it can, I haven't seen it.
Yes, true. Good point.
Yeah. And with that, today we are covering Hamilton. So if you have not seen this, it's on Disney Plus. Pause this episode, go check it out, and all 3 hours of it, 3.5 hours of it. What is it?
240, 2 hours 40.
240. Yeah. All 240 of it, and come back and listen, because we're gonna spoil some stuff.
We definitely will. We'll talk about some of the live performances and probably half of what I've already said about live performance. We'll also talk about musicals, which will go further, and the music specifically in Hamilton. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of thoughts from Todd on the, what he thinks about it, and see where we land, because I have thoughts on the music in a number of ways. There's a lot of lenses you can put on the music of Hamilton, and I want to touch on that and other such stuff and things and stuff.
So, quick synopsis: the real life. Okay, so this is a story of the real life of one of America's foremost founding fathers and first Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, captured live on Broadway from the Richard Rodgers Theater with the original Broadway cast. Directed by Thomas Kail, written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, based on the book by Chernow, cinematography by Declan Quinn, starring Lin-Manuel Miranda as Alexander Hamilton, Leslie Odom Jr. as Aaron Burr, Phillipa as Eliza Hamilton, Chris Jackson as George Washington, Renée Elise Goldsberry as Angelica Schuyler, David Diggs as Lafayette and Thomas Jefferson, Anthony Ramos as John Laurens and Philip Hamilton, and Jonathan Groff as King George.
Well, the word got around, they said this kid is insane, man. Took up a collection just to send him to the mainland. Get your education, don't forget from whence you came. And the world's gonna know your name. What's your name, man?
Alexander Hamilton. My name is Alexander Hamilton. And there's a million things I haven't done. But just you wait, just you wait.
When he was 10, his father split full of it, debt-ridden. 2 years later, see Alex and his mother bedridden, half dead, sitting in their room sick, the scent thick. And Alex got better, but his mother went quick.
So, what did you think? How did you enjoy this musical?
What did you
on
think?
A T-ball.
You like can't give it away on a T-ball. I've seen it live. A couple of years ago, my wife went to New York to visit a friend. I got her a ticket on Broadway and her friend a ticket on Broadway. Insanely expensive. I've never spent so much money on a ticket for anything in my entire life. Whatever you've bought for a ticket, triple that, and that's what I spent on one ticket. Yeah, I don't even want to tell you the dollar amount. It's stupid. But yeah, so she saw it once on Broadway. I saw it once live here in Austin. Obviously not with Lin-Manuel, and she didn't see it with Lin-Manuel because, they only did it for the first couple of years. But then, I've seen it on, Disney Plus like 4 times. It is to me, I'm just gonna, it is mind blowing for me. In every way. Like okay, let me just preface this with, years ago, before my wife ever saw it, right? One of the reasons I bought her a ticket is because she loved the soundtrack so much. Like, she bought the soundtrack and would play it in the car constantly, right? So I knew almost every song, not every word, but almost every song before she saw it, right? So then when I actually got to see it live, a lot of stuff actually made more sense, because it's hard in a soundtrack to a musical to know who's saying what. Like, for the most part, I got it, but there were a few lines and a few things that were really important to know that, oh, Lafayette says this. Oh, I don't know, Aaron Burr says this, and to know who the difference is, right? And so seeing it live made a lot more sense. But just so to your point earlier about it being difficult to go from, acting to the music, or from the music back to acting, right? Like, in between is like jarring and takes a while to get back into it. That's one of the reasons why this whole thing was music. Almost the entire thing is music. Like, there's a couple of lines that are said, not to music, but they're in between musical lines, and they're very musical in their nature when they're said. In fact, it's almost like a comma in the middle of a sentence when that happens, for the most part. And so I'm never taken out of the music. I'm always expecting the music to continue. So for me, I'm never taken out of it. Also, just the music specifically, let's just speak to the music before anything else. And I'm not going to go on a huge tirade here, because I want to get your thoughts. I really want to get your thoughts, because I know that you are not a musical fan, and I don't have any idea how much you liked or disliked this, but, musically, it's absolutely incredible. I've never heard anything as good as this. Like, from beginning to end, I cry at the beginning. I cry in the middle. I am openly weeping at the very end. Like, I cannot control myself. I find myself heaving because I'm crying inside and filling up with tears before it explodes when she sees whatever happens at the end. Like they don't even tell you what she sees. You know, you might think what she sees. I might think something completely different, but they never say it. And Lin-Manuel never says it either. He's like, it's just, what do you think she sees? You know, at the end. I don't know. But that moment when she burns the letters, when Philip dies, like there are so many, when George Washington goes home, like all of these, like steps down, all of these moments are like massive moments in our country's history, or like either in our country's history or in his life. And I feel all of them. And the music is perfectly written. It's perfectly sung. These singers are unreal. Phillipa So and Renée, Elise, Goldsberry just melt my mind. And let me also say, Lin-Manuel spent 5 years writing this, maybe more, maybe 6, and wrote every single song. Like, I don't know if you've seen this, but there is a breakdown of a song in here called "Wait for It" that's on Sound Exploder, which is on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, you should go watch it, because he talks about writing that song and how he knew it was a pivotal song for Aaron Burr's character. Because the thing is like, you can have a piece of history that you want to write and you want to tell the story, but it's hard to tell all of these little things and convey at the same time that you're trying to convey a personality, you're also trying to move the story along at the same time and not make it boring, especially when you're singing a 3-minute song, right? Like, it's so easy, like you and I know, for a song to be out of place, or like, oh, really? You needed another verse to tell me the same thing you told me in the first verse? Really? But I think a combination of a few things, a combination of that these performers are so freaking good. And I mean, they've been around the block. None of them, you know, are like super green. They've all been performers for a long time. And they all had to audition like 5 times or something for these roles. But it's a combination of them being so darn good at singing and dancing and performing, and of ramming, just like jamming so many words and so much content into those words. Like, the song where Angelica sings about missing out on her chance to be with Hamilton. There are so many little words that you will, I guarantee you, I don't care how close you listen or watch. You did it. You listened and watched super closely. I don't care how attentive you are, you will miss a lot. But you know what? I don't mind that. I really don't. Because the first time you ever heard, like, I don't know, a Busta Rhymes song, I guarantee you didn't know every single word. You didn't hear every single word there. You had to listen to it 5-10 times before you did. Now, Garrett, it's not a 2.5 hour song. I get it. But not every song is like that. There are certain songs that are. But it's just so brilliantly crafted with amazing rhymes and amazing words that you don't normally hear, or you don't expect to hear. How's that? Anyway, the music is phenomenal. The dancing and the is fine. You know, it is what it is. It's not super distracting. I love the set design. It's brilliant. It almost never changes the entire time. And the floor has those turntables on it, one in the middle and another one that spins the opposite way just outside. And the way they use that is brilliant. Things like Hamilton says goodbye or something to Angelica, and she rolls away as his wife Eliza rolls into his arms. Like, that's beautiful. It's brilliantly well done. Things like passing a letter around the entire space till it gets to Hamilton on the other side of the stage while they're singing. They don't waste a ton of time. And I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm thinking, yes, it would be easier to watch if it was shorter, but it would be not as fulfilling for me. I'm so in love with every piece of music in this that I just don't ever want it to stop. Almost every single song, I'm thinking, oh, I don't want that guy to stop singing. I don't want that guy to stop rapping. I don't want that girl to stop singing, especially if it's Angelica Schuyler. I don't want, that kid to die. I don't no, don't shoot him, Aaron. Don't do it. You're going to regret it, and then tying all that up with a moral that is prevalent throughout the entire movie, throughout the entire musical. I mean, we talk about movies that do this so well, that have a motif that just beats the shit out of the motif throughout the whole movie. It just comes back and comes back and comes back. And that happens here. It happens. In so many lines. I mean, not throwing away my shot. I'm coming home. Just all the time. I think there's probably 4 or 5 that they continually readdress throughout the whole thing. And he ties them in. So they'll be singing one song and he'll tie Not Throwing Away My Shot into the end of George Washington's song. So it's that whole idea of taking something that is so complicated, because this story is so complicated, and making it seem so simple that just makes it feel brilliant to me. Yeah, I have more to say, but I want to hear your take after I've kind of spit all of that.
I'm a little all over the place. On the one hand, I mean, I do think it's brilliant. Really, really well written. All the performances are absolutely fantastic. The story is there, and it's hard to do perfect history, which this is not. I know he fudged a lot of things, like Jefferson, right, I don't believe was actually in France while the Revolutionary War was happening, stuff like that. But I'm fine with that. You fudge a thing to construct a narrative, and to help kind of propel, I don't want to call them villains and heroes, but to kind of create tensions where there may have been tensions in real life. You're trying to tell a dynamic story, not just, this isn't a history class. And so with that caveat, they still did a really excellent job of setting the mood, like you talked about with Throw Away Your Shot. I think that's such a great use of exposition and song, which, to be clear, this entire movie is exposition and song, or this entire play. But even within that, you still have to very efficiently construct analogies and to build character and establish your era and your setting, because I think there's only one small sliver of a section in here where they're not singing. I mean, it's very, very small. It's Aaron Burr, Leslie Odom Jr. kind of setting up a scene. I mean, it's very quick and brief. It's probably all of 10 seconds. But for the other, 2 hours and 39 minutes, we're in singing and dancing mode. And so to be able to do that in a very efficient way. So for Not Throwing Away My Shot, they're establishing 2 things there at the very same time, which is the state of America. America was a very different, in a very different place in this era, right? This is the Revolutionary War and a lot going on. And so if you don't understand that already, if you're kind of walking in cold, when is Alexander Hamilton? Help me. And by just establishing, the country is young and hungry, and that's very much, like Alexander Hamilton himself. You're establishing so much, you're rooting us in the scene without giving us a very boring, what the hell? 1 second.
It's so dark. Wes, come back. I miss you.
back-to-back recordings. And so without, breaking the audience's attention with this boring kind of, I don't want to call it like a text crawl, but effectively like the year is 1775. Alexander Hamilton is sailing at a time when America is in this revolutionary whispers, or whatever. Like there's a boring way to do it, and there's an exciting, captivating way to do it. And they chose the latter, and they did it, expertly through obviously rap and hip hop and song and dance. And even that opening number is really great. I really loved, like, everyone is in white except for like Burr and Hamilton, who are your key figures. And it kind of gives it this heavenly feel while drawing your attention to who really matters. Like, they all matter. Like, there's several other, George Washington is there, the Schuyler sisters are all there, but everyone else is in white. And so they're doing so many really intelligent things. And yet, like, at the same time, I was exhausted because like you said, I was very much paying attention and trying to digest everything. And I'm conflicted on the one hand, like, it's excellent storytelling in verse and rhyme. But objectively, as someone who's been listening to rap since I was 5, I wouldn't say it's like good rap in and of itself. It's great and excellent rap as a method of storytelling, but not necessarily if this was an album that just got released apropos of nothing, this wouldn't have sold, because it's just, and to be fair, it wasn't meant to be. Like, it does well as a soundtrack because the music is really good. And if you love musicals, like, it's still very, very good. It's very entertaining, and it's telling you a really good story, flawlessly through prose. But this is not the kind of thing that's going to appeal to the hip hop community. Again, apropos of nothing, like, you have to enjoy the musical, to, as a hip hop fan, say, oh yeah, I'm really enjoying this. And so I was having this very big conflict within myself. Like, I'm sitting through a musical that's on a stage, is pre-recorded. It's over 2.5 hours, and it's in a medium that I love, hip hop, in a medium that I hate, musicals. So, like, I was just all over the place. But even within that, like, once you're in the flow, and I will say my second time through, I enjoyed it a lot more. I didn't finish it. It's playing in the background. If you're watching us on YouTube and you see me staring off, it's not that I'm bored with this show. It's that I keep kind of sneaking a peek at the musical, the second half, because I only got through the first hour and a half, right through intermission, and then we started recording. But I was having a much more
this is
enjoyable time.
This is not something where, like, watching it without sound is going to be good.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not. It's just people in the dark.
It's not like a normal movie.
It's just people in the dark. Yeah. But the second time through, I was enjoying it so much more because, like you said, like, the words are popping out a lot better. I wasn't sure if I wasn't, super happy with the mix, even though I will say this is probably the best mixed stage performance I've ever heard. But even within that, like, there's only so much you can do. It's still a stage performance. The mics are still, 6 inches away at best. And that's if they laid the mic in the hairline. Some of them, like, I can't tell where Eliza's mic is. I think it might be in her dress. I don't see it in her hair.
It's on their head.
Well, it's not on everyone's head. I'm looking at her and I'm not seeing it on her head, is what I'm saying. Like, maybe it's on her head and they just really hit it well, but I was looking for it in her hair and I couldn't see it in her hair. But wherever it is, like, it's not proper mic placement like you would be, recording a normal, perfectly mixed soundtrack. And so even given that, whatever the handicap that they're working with, it's incredibly well mixed. Like, holy crap. But generally, yeah, so I'm a little here and there in terms of the music because, storytelling does have a history in rap, and not to say that every single rap song is a story, but I mean very much in the way that they're doing storytelling in Hamilton. Like, if you think of Slick Rick, Lottie Dottie, right? Or Dana Dane, Cinderfella, even like Jay-Z and Nas, do their own kind of storytelling songs here and there. Not many. I want to say like Jay-Z probably did at least one. I know on Blueprint 2, Meet the Parents, and I forget the one of the Nas song. It was on Stillmatic, but it's hard. It's really, really hard to tell a story in a rap song and also make it like good rap and compelling story. Like you're just asking, for people to hit fast forward. And so for Lin-Manuel Miranda to do that for 2.5 hours is astronomical, while also factoring in the idea that he's telling multiple narratives. He has to give everything, identifiable melodies, and even identifiable character traits within the songs. Like comparing King George is having to wear a completely different, not just, the music itself, but his personality has to shine through word choice and cadence. And then, George Washington has to have his own power dynamic within his, that goes beyond just the performer himself, right? It has to be performed within the music and the word choice. Like he's doing so many incredible things, and I see it. And that makes, even if I wouldn't necessarily ever cue this up again, that has more to do with me than it absolutely has to do with me being able to recognize this is like a feat that he did, and it's worth every single accolade. It's worth all the sellouts. People lining up around the block praying to God to get the lotto, like all of it. It's yeah, I completely agree. Like you were saying, the stage itself is genius. Granted, I haven't seen that many musicals or ballets, and what they did with the floor itself was brilliant. And the way they used it to create like these walkways, like they set up these lampposts so that you had this illusion of they're going on a walk. Brilliant. Like, and the use of letting someone leave while someone else enters. Those are just really, really incredibly well thought out and designed aspects of this. And I can only imagine what it looks like now in 2020, because I'm sure every year they're kind of looking for a new little wrinkle to make it pop and to make it fresh again, without destroying the idea of what people are showing up for. And I can only imagine how hard that is. But yeah, and so I'm really, really glad you told me to watch it. It's really good. Absolutely worth the time investment. And I probably will watch it at least one more time now that I have familiarity and I can actually kind of pick out the words, and the story flows a little bit better. Like the first time through, my favorite song, and I would say the only great song here, which was "Wait for It." Like I just loved it, but I didn't understand almost anything other than "Wait for it." I'm willing to wait for it. And it's hard, man. It's hard. And I'll wrap that up with this comment. It's almost impossible to make a musical with just actually great songs. Like I hesitate because I haven't seen enough musicals, but I would hesitate to say that any musical has just a out and out great track. Like, holy crap, you made a great cut. And it just happens to work within a musical. And I think Wait For It is certainly, I think that could, live on its own. And the only other one to my mind, and I really spent some time thinking, I didn't look it up. But I would say maybe Somewhere Over the Rainbow from Wizard of Oz probably lives on its own really, really well as its own song. But there's other
Which
good
one?
songs.
Sorry, you broke up.
Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Oh, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Oh my God.
Yeah, I think that lives on its own as its own song. And I struggled because I was thinking of, well, what other musicals do I know songs from? And I'm like, yeah, there's some really fun ones that work really well within the musical. Like Rent has that, the number song, I would just call it. Like that's a really fun song. I don't know that it's great apart without Rent. This is the question I was kind of asking myself. Without Rent, is that a great song? I don't think so. I think it's a pretty good song. I don't know that it's a smash hit. I don't think Memories is a smash hit without Cats. And I was just kind of running through all these songs in my head, and I just didn't land on any. But I think Wait For It sounds like a song that would have been on like Usher's first album, My Way, in whatever, 97, 98, like, or on like a LSG, Joel Sweat Levert song, or maybe Brian McKnight. Like, it has that kind of melodic quality to it. It just has a beautiful, gorgeous melody, and the message kind of stands on its own, without really having to get into, oh, it's about Hamilton, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. I think it plays really well as a melody, and the performance is beautiful. Leslie Odom Jr., my God. And I wouldn't have thought his voice would have lent so much to that song, but absolutely just crushed it. Yeah. So I don't know, like, if you want to sift through my debris that I just like.
No, dude, I get all of it. And, to this day, I war with that, that concept of could this song or this, the track or whatever that you want to call it, could that stand on its own? And then I got to remind myself that it's not why it was written. Yeah. It wasn't written to be a single. Mm-hmm. None of these were written for that. So no, okay. Let's compare, I don't know. Let's, what's a track that there's a lot of words? I don't know, but let's just say, My Shot. Okay. So let's just say that's a rap track, and, it was written for this. Well, let's say Tupac wanted to write a rap track about Hamilton. Like, that's okay. I'm sure you probably could, but I would argue that a lot of it would probably be, or some of it at least, would probably be a little bit cryptic, because I think that in modern music, a lot of times there are at least one or two lines that are kind of a little bit ambiguous, because just for sheer fact of like wanting to be interesting, mm-hmm. right? Or like raise questions, or like thoughtfulness, right? But there's no time for that shit here. Like, there is no, like, he can't have a line where you're like, I don't really understand it. Mm-hmm. He can have a line where you got to think about it to get it, but like nothing that leaves up to ambiguity.
Yeah, this isn't the time to be abstract. Clear. Yeah.
Right. No, every single line, every mm-hmm. single word has to be clear and to the point, and push the narrative forward, because it is the narrative.
Right.
Right. So,
to be fair, like I said all of that, like, this is serving a different master and a different purpose than trying, like, yeah. You're saying, like,
no, I'm not talking over you.
But no, totally. But I would say the distinction would be, even if you rewrote, in the same style, I don't think any of these songs would still, melodically speaking, be able to make it as their own cuts. Like the couplet styling in and of themselves, because of that reason that we're talking about, that it is serving a different master. Like, there's just no way, I don't see any other way, or any way possible, to make most of these songs interesting enough to live on an album, even if you, of course, distort it and switch things around, because of that reason. Because
they'd make no sense. I mean, like, each one is about something else. Like, even in Wait For It, he talks about Hamilton is in for an endless uphill climb. Like, what the fuck does that mean if you don't have mixed in with all the other tracks?
I'm saying that the melody within Wait For It would live on its own, could make it as an actual song. If you wanted to rewrite the lyrics still in the same exact tone and the same exact rhythms, it would live on its own as a cut on an album, because of the melody and because mm-hmm. of the styling of it. Whereas most of these other songs would have a very hard time standing out on any album, because of the general style and the tone, and the rhyming style itself just doesn't really lend itself to anything other than what it was meant to do.
Yeah, I think with this, like, this itch that this scratches for me is the longing for an album, right? Like, today we don't have albums anymore. We've got fucking singles and EPs and stuff that like, it's great. I'm not saying that music is totally bad today. I'm just saying it's different. You know, we used to have records, like full albums of music, right? Where like, yes, you would have singles, of course, but you know, if you put it in context with the whole record, all of a sudden the single isn't really as amazing as it was because the album is more amazing. I mean, okay, a good example would be U2, Live from Red Rocks. That was the first cassette tape I was ever given. And I mean, I didn't know what a single was, but the entire thing from beginning to end just melted my brain. And then I heard, you know, Sunday Bloody Sunday on the radio and stuff. I'm like, you guys don't have any idea. What about Gloria? You guys, you know, you haven't like listened to the album, you know? But you don't have that today usually. No. It's mostly like singles. So this though, you know, I'm waiting for, I don't know, Satisfied. And then after Satisfied, I'm waiting for Nonstop. And then I'm waiting for, you know, I don't know, what did we just say? Wait for it. You know, like there's all of like, or this next track will come on. I'm like, oh yeah, this is great because she says this and he does that and whatever. And so it's this whole feeling of getting to go through the process of a whole album. And I think also I'm a little bit biased more so than you because I've listened to it so much more, bro.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for probably 2 years on an album. I mean, she had it a year before she went to see it in New York. And then that's been 2 years since then. So like, yes, I've known about Hamilton and listened to it for 3 or 4 years now. So well versed in it. And so that's why, you know, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that's one of the reasons I love it because of that, you know, and as opposed to despite it. Right. And I mean, there are some moments also that I want to call out that just make me fall in love with it a little bit more. And then we'll get into your points. Okay. I think a lot of times when you watch a play, and I'm going to compare this to a play, even though it's a musical. It is a musical, but I'm just going to like get the music, let the music go for just a second because I love it so much and I don't want to lump it into musicals.
But it is still a stage play.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. There are so many brilliant things about plays in general, right? Like the staging of the play, right? The production of the play, like where are you standing when she says this and what do you do physically, right? Or where is this thing at this moment and where is it going to be at that other moment when it comes back and you see it some other time? And the positioning of things and how to make the most of space. You have a very limited amount of space. And even the space that you have is even more limited, right? Because the human eye can only look at one thing, focus on one thing at a time. You see, 180 degrees, but I'm literally only looking at you right now, but I see my entire computer screen. Like so the knowledge of people the 1,300 people in the audience can only look at one thing at a time. So we have to be able to direct their vision, but at the same time, if they look anywhere else in the stage, they can be entertained still. Right? And maybe not every moment, but the important moments. And they handle that space so well with, they have that bottom layer, that bottom level, and then they have the stairs up one side that goes up the top and the rafters, and then to the other side, they have a backstage behind this back wall. They have doors two doors on each side, where people can come in and out of. And so they're able to shift people in and out and at random times without you even realizing, and then slide them out of the way by using lighting. Right? Mm-hmm. So if they focus the lighting in the center, then the lighting on the outside gets darker and they can either bring people in or out without people. I mean, you might notice it if you look at it, but your gaze is focused on where the light is, right? So they do that really well. But other things in the actual production. So my most favorite moment, besides the finale, besides that final moment that I literally lose my breath. I cannot breathe in that moment when I watch that. But besides that moment, is when Burr shoots Hamilton, and that woman comes out and acts as the bullet.
Yeah.
He catches the bullet, and it stops time or slows down time. And it gives not only that, but then the balls or the foresight, because when they were actually doing this production, they didn't have a finale yet. He hadn't written the finale when they were working on the production. He didn't know how to do it. He didn't know where it was going to go. Or like, you've already done Wait For It. You've already done all of these great numbers that are defining moments of your character. And now your main character is going to die. How does the mindset of him being able to put himself into the mindset of that human being and what might happen is just brilliant. By taking all the music out, everything goes silent and still. And then he a cappella revisits all of the moments of the actual musical. And not just all of the songs, but all of the important moments. Rise up, Eliza. It just, it gives me chills even thinking about it, because of not only do you have to have the foresight of being able to put yourself in the position of somebody who is getting shot and knows that they're going to die the split second. I mean, we're talking the nanosecond before you get hit. It's happening because he's got his hand in the air and he sees Burr, and Burr does not. So in that moment, he just realizes, and his life flashes before his eyes, and his life is this musical. So but it's quiet. Everything is quiet. And so having the foresight to do that is just brilliant. Absolutely loved that. It just takes my breath away completely. And then focusing on Burr, and his just, we get to see this guy who his character is developed so well for me that I love him. He's not the villain. Like, he's a dude who just had a different approach to his life. His life meant I'm going to bide my time until I have my moment. I'm going to wait for it. My moment's coming. I'm going to wait for it, right? And Hamilton was the opposite. Hamilton took his life by the balls. And, in his instance, in his circumstance, it was beneficial. And in Burr's, it was still beneficial, but not to the point that he was happy. But he realizes at the end, the world was wide enough for Hamilton and me. This whole time, he takes this whole huge arch of I'm happy with waiting for it. I'm frustrated that this guy isn't waiting for it and he's getting something. Now I'm pissed off that he's in, and I'm angry. And now I realize that it would have been okay. I would have been okay. Is just fantastic. And then the other aspect, and I'll stop so we can go into your notes. But the other thing that I absolutely loved was the moment that I think we talked about earlier, where what's her name? Angelica. Thank you. And where Angelica is doing the toast, and the whole rewind happens where she talks about, because there is no, and I've watched it multiple times, there is no insinuation when she goes to get Hamilton for Eliza. There's no insinuation in her face or anything that makes you feel like she's going to regret this. Mm-hmm. Because at the moment, she doesn't. Yeah. At the moment, she looks past him because he's beneath her, because she has money and he has nothing and he is no one. And then she realizes a week in, or a few weeks in, after they get, she's read his letters that he's been writing Eliza, that no, she actually loves him. And so when she's doing your toast, we see the rewind, and I mean, physical rewind of everything. And then that amazing, incredible rap that she does is, that's very impressive. That production wise is just so well done, so beautifully crafted, and so heartbreaking at the same time. Because at least I have his eyes in my life. It just ends on such the perfect note of heartbreak and hopefulness, and with some silver lining, right? Because we don't want to be heartbroken yet. Not yet.
Sure. There's time for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of time for that, obviously. Anyway, there's more, but I'm going to stop.
No, and just to build on what you're talking about with Angelica, like I love that even as the story progresses later on, that refrain, that pitch and tone and rhyming couplet that they set up in that surprising song, they keep that so that as the story progresses, you are instantly brought back to where her emotional state really is and what she's living with. And that's really smartly done through the use of the pitch and the rhyming style to help identify not just her as a character, but her story specifically is right there within just that pitch and word choice. It's really genius writing, man.
Good point.
Yeah, and to build on what you were talking about, like this is a stage, this is a performance, and that means a lot of things. I think you covered really well the stage setup and the brilliance of using the lighting and the stage atmosphere and the doors and entries and exits and the levels to it. But then on top of that, whenever you're in a live performance, as an actor, you have to shift that as well. If you're in a film, well, if the camera's not on you, you might be able to phone it in a bit, or maybe even if it is on you, you're like, I need another take, right? Obviously, you don't get that option in a live performance, which is why they rehearse for 1 or 2 months beforehand, depending on the grandiosity of the play, and it comes with a lot of things, a lot of consequences for that. Like the moments are still happening while you're in transition. Like you said, you don't get to choose where someone looks at on a stage. Like you can do your best to direct their attention through lighting and blocking. But even within that, there's still going to be moments where you don't really get to pick. And so whenever there's a transition happening, moments are still happening, even though they're in transition between songs. So for instance, you don't just exit. You don't just walk off the stage. Well, my part's done, I'm gone. You continue to play in the sandbox. So like when the women finish singing Mind at Work, and they're exiting, they're laughing, they're looking back, they're still playing with all the other actors on stage. They're still providing you something, an atmosphere, something to look at. They're still helping to set the tone and create the illusion, that this is a life, there's things happening. And so they never let their guard down until they're well off stage. And that's, just good performance, as being a good actor to all your other cast members. And King George, one of the things I really love.
I'm so glad you're bringing that up. So glad. I was just going to say.
Jonathan Groff blew me away. I had no idea that was him. I mean, granted, he's in a wig and I already struggle with facial recognition. I am the anti-AI software of recognizing faces.
Well put.
But I love so many things about the casting decisions here. I'm pretty sure no white people are good people in this. Like anyone you think could be, oh, he's white. Yeah. I think he's on our side. Nope, that dude's a dick.
Yep, that's it. Nope. I
love that. But I think it reinforces something that I really deeply believe, which is funny because in film, sometimes racial casting can really matter. Like if you're trying to depict a family on stage, it would be really weird to have like 2 white parents and like an Asian kid. You're just going to be like, oh, what's happening in their life? Are they going to address this? Was he adopted? Like it pulls you out of a movie, but in a stage, it really doesn't matter. You can get away with so much more. So cast however the hell you want, man. And I'm not even talking about historical accuracy. They could make this into a movie with all the same actors, and it still doesn't matter. Like, if they turn it into a straight drama, I literally wouldn't care, because technically speaking, like, race is a social construct, right? It's not something that in our genetic code really makes up that much. It's the difference between red hair and brown hair. It's the difference between blue eyes and brown eyes. Like, it's insignificant. It's only socially constructed to matter. And so if you're going to, play historical figures, I don't think it really matters. I think it will help, to some degree, if you cast accurately, especially if it matters within the context of the story, as again, race is a social construct. So if you're telling a story where that's a social issue, it definitely makes way more sense. But honestly, I personally wouldn't care if someone literally played a straight up, like, yeah, we're going to tell a drama of Hamilton. And of course he's an Asian. Like, I just don't really care. Like, you're not going to offend me. I just want the rest of his family to be Asian as well, because family members do look alike. To a large degree. And so, you know, making that make sense within the film is what I would kind of care more about. But
yeah,
to that end, but even less so in a stage play, you can get away with all that stuff in a stage play, because especially a musical, because we're already so heavily in the mode of suspension of disbelief that it doesn't matter if within the same family, like, you have whatever, you know, mixed races, and, you know, who cares if George Washington's black and bald, when every single image that I've ever seen of George Washington is white with the wig, with the powdered wig. Like, I don't really care, because I've never seen an actor be more George Washington than Chris Jackson. Holy crap.
Dude crushes it, right?
Crushes it, like, owns it every step of the way. And by the 60 seconds in of watching, you know, George Washington, I'm just like, yeah, of course. George Washington's always been black and bald, right? Am I wrong about this? Like, he is so damn good. And so I love that, you know, that we have all the diversity, of course, and that probably really helped, you know, with casting choices, you know, with, you know, music that's hip hop. It's probably a lot easier to find someone who's a minority that, you know, is able to rap a lot better than, you know, trying to get Jonathan Groff to rap. I have no idea if he can rap or not, but we didn't
he might
be able to. I mean, after watching him do this, I'm like, I'm never doubting his ability ever again. But he steps on stage and he does something that for me is so incredibly hard, which is he never breaks. Not for 1 second. He's playing a part of a king. And so his movement is minimal. He's very kingly, almost to the point of psychopathy, right? He seems like a psychopath up there. And he never
spitting and drooling,
but he never corrects it, because to do that, he would have to break the illusion of being a king. And he would
control
in control. Yeah. Like, everything is exactly as I want it. And to some degree, he wouldn't even have to do much, right? He would have to, like, bite his lip to get some of that spittle off his lip. And he refuses. I'm not going to break, not for a second.
It's awesome.
It's
good point.
Perfect. And it's so tempting as a human being to not touch your face and to not part your hair and not scratch your eye. And that's already going, you know, for any actor. But then to absolutely have to use your stillness as a part of your character the way he does. Because I'm sure some of these other actors are able to kind of steal a moment here and there. Like, oh, my arm itches, and so whenever I do this move, I'm going to bring my arm a little bit closer to my rib cage. And it doesn't. And he is just absolutely owning the stage in that moment. And it's absolutely beautiful. One of the things I really like, going back to wardrobe, was his white cape. Beautiful choice, not just because, you know, it pops on the stage in a, you know, luxurious way in contrast to much of the other actors, you know, that have these hard linens, these hard cottons. He has this very plush, you know, color, which is very kingly, of course, but also it works so well whenever they have the light so dark, the white reflects very brilliantly, so that whenever he does move, that little shoulder pop, you can see it. It's so small. What he's doing is so small, but it pops so well because of the color choice that they made on his wardrobe and the way they lit it. And so when that moment happens, the audience cracks up because he's like, you know, there's something to a white guy kind of popping a little bit, and then the attitude of this king, and in tune with what he's, you know, discussing on stage. It just plays all perfectly. If you don't see it, if you don't see exactly what he's doing there, it's not going to get that laugh. It's not going to get that, you know, bit of joy, because he has comic relief. which is something to be really, really funny to going back to the racial stuff, because if you go back 100 years, vaudeville, and I'm going to completely botch, I'm forgetting what it's called, but minstrel shows, right? Where white people dressed up in blackface and kind of made these ridiculous, they were just there for comedy. And so I really like that, they kind of flipped it on its ear and like, no, we're going to use the white guy for comedy. He's going to be our on stage, minstrel show, to, a light degree. They weren't obviously hammering that because he was, still a king. But it was beautiful. Like it was really, there's a lot of tones that are very light and played with throughout the film, that are great. And I love the use of, a white guy as King George, and we're having this rebellion that's filled with, black and people of color, and in the rebellion against the white guy. Like it's genius, and it's fun, and it's lighthearted, and it's not to be, stressed over.
Actually, Lin-Manuel talked about when they performed in England and Prince Harry came to the performance. He said he felt awkward. But they didn't care. Like, because they're related, obviously.
Yeah.
It's like his great grandfather, I don't know, something like that. But he thought it was just, when he saw Prince Harry laughing in the audience, he's like, okay, we're cool. It's all good. But that was a concern.
So good. I wouldn't have even thought of that.
I know, right?
I always love on 4th of July, someone posts like a picture from whoever, some, Queen Elizabeth or King Henry or whoever, King George. And they're like, happy Traitors Day, happy Treasonous Day, you traitors, and like, or some, they just kind of make fun of it because that's what we are, But yeah, so there's so much smart things, so many smart things that they're doing in this, that, just deserves, notice for sure. And I barely made any notes at all. Like I have not even 15 lines of notes, and it just pops out. It screams for it. And I think if I were to ever need to shoot a stage play, I would heavily reference this thing, because they obviously did one live show, and I would assume they did more shows that day or maybe that week where they just were able to get on stage with the cameraman to actually grab coverage, so that, we're not going to disrupt the show, but we also want this close up of Hamilton and of whoever, because some of those lenses felt pretty wide, but maybe they were all just sitting in the crowd, in the audience. I have no idea.
No, they did multiple performances and stuff to get multiple angles and all that stuff. So
nice.
So, like there were a couple. I think like the bigger, wider ones were when they had an audience, but there are several that they didn't have an audience. Because
you want that, right? You want the live audience reaction. That's a big part of feeling like you're, as a viewer at home in the theater, is also feeling the ambience of the audience themselves. Yeah. Nice.
But to be clear also, like the rehearsal wasn't for them. The rehearsal was for the crew. It was for like the camera crew. Because like I've seen a couple of interviews where they asked them about like, were you nervous because you're being filmed or, whatever. And actually Chris Washington said, no, we've done this 1,000 times. Just because you put a camera in front of us doesn't mean that it's any more nerve wracking. He's like, it's exactly the same. So for them, it's just another day at the office, but to know where the camera should be or whatever, or if there might have been some things where like, if they wanted to be very specific, like, okay, normally you would look out at the crowd, but the camera is going to be coming from the left. And so you want to make sure you look there. Maybe there was some stuff like that, but for the most part, it was mostly for the actual camera crew. But I love that you bring up the race card there, because I think that there's obviously a massive theme throughout this whole thing. It was purposefully cast all minority, all, if you want to say black. But there are, I think, several Hispanic folks in this too. But all minority cast, or 99% minority cast, obviously. I think there's like one other white guy in the actual like dance crew or whatever. But for the most part, that was obviously purposeful, like you mentioned. But there are other things like within the actual storytelling and the writing that he did. So, for example, with Jefferson, like Jefferson was a Southern slave owner.
Mm-hmm.
Like let's be real,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when he's debating Hamilton in the Senate, about fiscal policy and stuff, and he's saying, oh, you just want to tax the South because you want our money and all that stuff because we're wealthy, and Hamilton says, we know who's doing the planning, addressing the fact that, yeah, you're fine in the South because you don't pay for your labor, right?
Yeah.
That's,
Jefferson
that's
was in
one thing.
Virginia, but yeah, I understand your point.
But he was still a slave owner. Like, wasn't part of the South, if you want to call it, at the time. He's had children with his slaves. So
Sally Hemings.
But then also addressing there are things that he doesn't have to address, but he purposely does. Like I forget what his name was, but it was John Lawrence wanting to start the first Black Battalion, right, and never getting to because he gets killed after the war ends, and that being like a specific thing that they not only do they call it out. Does John Lawrence character, Anthony Ramos, not only did he call that out in the song that he wants us to do that, they reference it again. And then when he's killed, like other people get killed, but when he's killed, he stands there under the spotlight and that was such a moving part for me because he's dead in the spotlight addressing the crowd saying that he didn't get a chance to do it. And then he looks over at Hamilton and Hamilton looks back at him. While he's talking to Eliza, while Eliza's, he's finding out. It's just those little things, right? That, and then just two more things, and then I'll stop. Actually, just one more thing. The one other really cool thing, and if you don't know to notice it, you will miss it. At the end, when Eliza is saying all the things that she did, right after Hamilton died, where she said she spoke out against slavery. Or she says something about the Washington Monument. She establishes the Washington Monument, and he says she tells my story, and then she says I spoke out against slavery. You see him bow his head in disgust because he was a slave owner himself. So the next time you watch that Jefferson. He's like,
Jefferson,
Washington.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's like. And he just breaks. So you would notice, but a lot of people wouldn't. Like things like that are called out throughout the entire play to reestablish the fact that this is not just a fight for a country. This is also a fight for humanity, right? For the underdog, for the repressed, right? And telling that narrative through a slave owning era is very difficult to do.
Yeah,
right.
Because
and
I
it's
think
not
they
just
also,
you cast it.
Yeah, I think they also kind of gloss over Hamilton played a role in some like slave trading. I think earlier in his life. I don't know how old he was, and I think that's fine. Like,
I think that's when he was like in the Caribbean.
Yeah,
still, and when he was like doing books, taking books and stuff. Like,
and I think that's fine. I like that you brought that up. Like, it is a very, difficult thing to have because on the one hand, you have all these men who are, fighting for freedom and then making inequality, within their own home, like how women are treated and how, Black people are treated and, just slave owning in general. That's a really difficult conversation to have, but I really do appreciate that they still told the story faithfully while acknowledging those things and not letting those things bar them from, partaking in this story. That's a really hard line to walk because I can only imagine how conflicted, so many of the Black community, feel living in a country that has such a terrible history that still, echoes even in, 2021. And
I mean,
obviously, yeah,
last week.
still going, still improving. But I also think that's kind of the beauty of what this movie, this show, touches on. This was such a milestone in humanity's history, because even though they weren't the perfect vessels, they still established something that allowed for the progress, that the world has seen. Slavery has been, a blight on mankind for, thousands of years. And finally, because of them, because of what they did, as inhumane and as evil some of their aspects were, they still created an avenue for freedom. And it's weird, some of the double speak that they say, like both of them, Washington and Jefferson, on the one hand had slaves, on the other hand, like, I abhor this. Like, well, bro,
yeah,
what the hell?
Have your cake and eat it.
Haven't, yeah, exactly. And so
I guess you can.
You can start, well, for a time. And so, yeah, it's a tricky thing to do, but I appreciated that they acknowledged it without letting it completely sour, some of the other aspects of that story.
Yeah, the other brilliance of this to me, and I have no negative for it. I'm sorry. But the other brilliance of this to me is making Burr the narrator.
Yeah.
Think about that. Like, how do you make the guy who kills the main, like, who kills the quote unquote hero, if you want to call him, how do you make that guy, like, how do you make the audience feel for that guy? Well, let's start out by introducing you to the guy first. I'm the damn fool that shot him. He was the first one we see on stage, and then and then we find out, in the first song, that MFer shoots him? Wait a minute. Okay. And then throughout the whole thing, you're like, wait a minute, why? They're kind of friends. Like, Hamilton looks up to him, whatever.
Yeah.
And then throughout the whole thing, just the whole character development is just brilliant. And so making him the narrator is just like a great concept, a great idea to draw you in to him as a character.
Great point. Such a good point.
Yeah.
Because even if most of us who sit down to watch this, because even I, before, knowing anything about this musical, I knew about Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr and the duel. I could not have told you why they dueled, but I could have told you their names and that happened. But for anybody, maybe younger people or maybe people who just don't really care, setting that foreshadowing right at this beginning makes you look so much closer at the relationship for the rest of the show. And
great point.
God, it's just a great way to cue that up. That setup in the first minute of the play, pays off, really beautifully. Yeah, no, really good point on that. Nice. I have nothing left to add, I believe. I stretched every single one of my notes to their max.
So who would you identify yourself with more? Burr, the wait for it guy, or Hamilton, there's a million things I haven't done, but just wait?
Oh, man. I would probably identify more with...
or does it change?
Yeah, it kind of shifts, because I absolutely recognize and identify a lot with Hamilton, coming from obscurity and having no silver spoon in his mouth, and having to, work for everything you get. Like, I heavily identify with that, but I'm not nearly as confident and outgoing as he was. Like, he was fighting for his chance. And I wouldn't say I've ever been like fighting for my chance. I am at the same time waiting for my moment and just working on myself and continually trying to get better. Yeah, I don't know. What about you?
Yeah. Hamilton.
Yeah.
For sure. But even if I don't know what I'm working toward, I always have to be like, I have to have something. If I don't have something, I'm effing lost, man, and I'm depressed. But that doesn't. I think it really is like not a day-to-day thing, but maybe a month-to-month or week-to-week thing. I think sometimes I just don't want to do anything. I want it to come to me, and not to say that that Burr didn't do anything. He totally did. I'm just saying, like, he's waiting for his shot. Like they continually address that. And but I think I identify more so with Hamilton, but I, like you, am not as outgoing as he is. I just like always have to be working. Now, the thing about Hamilton, or at least the way that they portray him in this, is that he was always working towards one thing, right?
Yeah.
Always working to, and that one thing would change, but a little bit. Like he wanted to be, like lead an army, right? He wanted to fight. And then that changed after the fighting, where he wanted to, I don't think they ever said that he wanted to be president, but anyway, but he was always working towards the independence of the country. And then when that ended, working towards something else. So he had his things, but it was everything he did was so pointed and focused, and until it was done, there was nothing else. Not quite like that. I mean, I'm like that, but I look at like other people that so freaking driven that it's just like mind blowing. Like I can't wrap my mind. Elon Musk, let's use him. Like it's mind blowing how someone can do so much and with the same amount of time that I have, But and I'm not to that, but yeah, I would say Hamilton today, but maybe next week I'll say Burr.
No.
It's an interesting question that like I kind of have asked myself a few times, because I watched an interview of Lin-Manuel where he said that he used to think that he was more Hamilton, but since finishing Hamilton he feels like he's more Burr, which is interesting for a guy who is so creative and has written so much. I mean, he did the Moana soundtrack. He did In the Heights before Hamilton, but then the musical movie is coming out next year. Supposed to come out this year. And then he's done other things too. But it's interesting, someone who's done so much could feel like they're waiting.
Yeah,
that kind of makes me feel a little bit better if I feel like that.
That's true. I mean, waiting probably has a lot of advantages after you've made Hamilton.
I totally agree. Good job.
People are coming to you for things, and
well
now
said.
you get to kind of yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah. Good answer, man.
Nice. What are you going to recommend this week?
Yeah, so this week, I'm going to stick with the music. So the only other musical movie that I kind of can get behind that I enjoyed, and I haven't seen it in a long time, so recommending it might not be. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but I did enjoy some amazing things they did to make it. Is Les Mis, the film from 2012, because they sang live, and then they recorded the orchestra to them singing live after the fact. So all these pushes and pulls and tempos and stuff like that, that's real. They're playing to the audio of the vocal. And I just thought that, like, that is a massive effort to do something real that won't take me out of the moment. And I'm going to honor that in that film. So that's what I recommend.
Oh, nice one. Yeah, I was actually looking at that the other day, and it runs so long, I was almost going to hit play on it. And I was just like, because I think it was really late at night, and I was like, I'm not going to have time to sit through it. Yeah. Nice. I'm going to recommend a TV show on Apple TV Plus. If you have it, it's called Little Voice. It's created by Sarah Bareilles. I'm probably mispronouncing her name, but she's an incredible writer. What is it?
Oh yeah, Sarah Bareilles.
Bareilles. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, she created it. She does all the songwriting in it, and it's about it's set in New York, which I'm already a sucker for anything set in New York. It's my favorite city, and so anything that takes place in New York that's shot even, modestly well, I'm probably going to watch it, even if I dislike the story. But in this case, I like the story. The music is, okay. It gets really, really good about the midpoint. The lead actor, I think she's great. I love her and her brother. And her brother is, and I think this fits really well with Hamilton because her brother loves Hamilton, and he's like this Broadway aficionado, and they keep reenacting parts of Hamilton throughout the show, and it's adorable.
Oh, I want to watch it.
It's so fun.
I want to watch it.
It's really fun. So yeah, check that out, and if you can handle a little bit of cheese, I think it'll be worth it.
Is it streaming? Where is it?
Yeah, it's streaming on Apple TV Plus.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. So do that, and of course you'll be able to find trailers for that stuff in the show notes. But this week we have a short spotlight because we were doing an episode on hip hop effectively. I wanted to insert one of my recent favorite rappers out of Houston. Man, I love this dude. I'm going to insert a music video called Juice by Toby Nwigwe. I'm probably mispronouncing the hell out of that. And it features Paul Wall. Toby is like absolutely incredible because he's maintaining this Houston vibe. If you didn't grow up listening to Houston hip hop, like Lil Kiki, Screwed Up Click, Fat Pat, Swishahouse, like all that stuff, then you may not really appreciate how good Toby is at what he's doing, because he's still got this very good Southern vibe, while also doing something new to it that to me reminds me of like a Gil Scott-Heron. It's just brilliant, and lyrically he's destroying it. And to be able to do that, and also his music videos are just phenomenal with their minimalism. It's like it's very artistic. And maybe if you don't watch a lot of hip hop, you wouldn't expect something like this. But he just kills it. And then to also bring in Paul Wall, who is like, kind of old hat, Houston at this point. It's great. And they even make this very sly Chameleon Air reference. It's fantastic. So go watch the short spotlight this week. I promise you won't regret it. And if you do, then, leave a comment and say why you're wrong. And so stay tuned. Next week, we're going to get to some requests. And starting with Soul, that's a new animation from Pixar that's on Disney Plus. We're going to cover that next week, so stay tuned for that. And don't forget to subscribe, review us on iTunes. Apparently, so I went through Spotify during the Christmas break, and I don't think there's a way to actually rate and review podcasts on Spotify. So I've been asking our Spotifyers to do that, and they're probably like, bro, we can't do it. I'm sorry, we tried, but we can't do it, because that's how I envision all of our Spotify listeners. I don't know.
The problem is you're assuming that people are still listening to us at this point.
That's a good point. Yeah.
We're
going to invert this next week, and we're going to spend an hour telling you why you subscribe and review, and then like 60 seconds.
And then apologize for it.
And if you want to leave a comment on this episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/Hamilton.
And our quote of the day is from George Washington, which this is such a timely quote. Wow. No punishment, in my opinion, is too great for the man who can build his greatness upon his country's ruin.
Interesting.
That's such a timely quote. Well done.
I have no idea why, but yeah, thanks.
We know exactly why.
Yeah, we were like 6 days after insanity, 5 or 6 days after the insanity in Washington. But I think that really could apply to so many politicians. But of course, recently it's
none bigger.
Could never be more apropos than what we witnessed recently. So yeah.
Hopefully that was, when we say 6 days from it, hopefully that
nothing else
that means
happens.
that nothing else is going to happen. That's right. But we've still got another 9 days until the inauguration. So who knows? But if anyone out there, listening is angry or hurt, listen. we understand, nothing is perfect in this country or in this world, and we understand and we feel your pain. But physical violence is never the answer. Marching is fine. Protesting is fine. That is all your right as an American. But anything over and above that just has to be like on either side. Vandalism, violence, nothing is that's the kind of stuff that just cannot happen. So just please cry in your pillow or something. I don't know. Get drunk or I don't know, whatever. But just do drugs. Hell, I don't care. But just don't do that,
Yeah, don't do that.
Anyway.
Well said.
Great quote.
Thanks,
Great
man.
quote. But I won't do that. With that quote from Meatloaf, we're going to sign off. Now we've just lost all of our listeners. Sorry about that. Oh, God. Anyway, like Wes said, thank you guys so much for listening. This was a blast, man. Thank you for all your insight on this.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
This was great.
And make sure to subscribe and review us on iTunes or any whatever platform besides Spotify that you're on. And until next time, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies. Or some musicals.
Or some musicals.
Or some plays.
Or some plays.
Or, I don't know.
Whatever you want, man. Yeah. Just don't throw away your
Are we
shot.
just talking? Are we just talking over the music?
Yeah.
They can't hear us anyway?
That's right.
Okay, cool.
Cutting.
Got it.